Over the last 70 years, the genre of street photography has grown and evolved into something that is very powerful. This is because it has the ability to send meaningful messages visually in a way that words cannot. Street photography is all about being spontaneous and going with the flow, just seeing where the shoot takes you and what you can find to photograph. It's the art of capturing people in moments when they're unaware of the camera, simply going about their day. They remain neutral and don't fake their body language or emotion. It's all raw and natural. Street photography was first recognised as its own genre in the 1930s, but has changed to what we know it as today. Back then, a street photographer was someone who would take your picture in the street and then you would pay them for the print. This is not as popular today since everyone has high quality cameras to hand, just in their pockets in the form of phones. As time moved on and cameras changed, the term street photographer evolved. The images in this time did not usually contain people, as it was hard to do so candidly. With the big bulky format cameras, it was hard to blend in and not draw attention, which would cause people to change their behaviour or avoid the shot altogether. On a more simple note, one thing that is noticeable is that the images used to be black and white, but are now usually in colour, as before the 1960s, all that was available was black and white film. Cameras have changed a lot since the first one was designed in 1685 by Johann Zahn. His idea wasn't a reality for another 150 years. He was an expert in light and had written large amounts on camera obscura, magic lantern, telescopes and lenses. In 1888, Kodak released the first camera, which pretty much resembled a large wooden box with a glass circle for the lens. Moving on to 1948, Polaroid released its first camera that can instantly develop the image after it's taken. Then, 43 years later, we see the first digital cameras being sold and used. Some people that I'll be focusing on are Alex Webb and Henri Cartier-Bresson. These show two very different perspectives of the genre, with Webb, who shows the use of bright colours, compared to Bresson, whose images are in black and white. They are also different due to the two different time frames of the photographers. Webb has had a love for photography since school and studied it at the Carpenter Center for Visual Arts alongside his history and literature majors at Harvard. He later joined Magnum Photos in 1976 as an associate. The camera he uses is a Leica M rangefinder with 35mm lens. Bresson was one of those who pioneered the genre of street photography, and was also one of the founders of Magnum Photos in 1947. The small size of his Leica camera with 50mm lens is something that allowed him to get his amazing images. It's discreet and does not draw attention, so he was able to capture people's raw emotions into the image without them being fake. Some key techniques that are noticeable in the genre of street photography are rule of thirds, symmetry, and patterns. These things are very popular in this genre. Focusing on Webb and Bresson, Webb uses rule of thirds a lot in his images, with 3 separate sections that can be identified in most, if not all, of his images, with one always containing a person as the subject, and the rest of the image is filled with bright colour. Bresson is known for using something called the Fibonacci spiral. This is a way of separating up the frame and guides the viewer's eye through the image. This makes it more captivating and attention-grabbing. Here are some of my attempts at these techniques that are used by Webb and Bresson. The only challenge I encountered was finding appropriate locations to shoot, but everything came together in the editing process. Do you think street photography is invasive?
Yes and no. I suppose it depends how the photographer is acting. I've had a couple of instances in my life where I've been out in public and people have literally come right up into my face and taken a photograph of me. One, I think it's because I had my dog with me at the time and it maybe just looked cool. I was sitting on a bench with my dog and once just kind of walking around the street, and I found that particularly invasive and off-putting. But in kind of general terms of, you know, going out on the street and taking, sometimes referred to as candid photography, isn't it? taking images of people without their knowing. Could be seen as being invasive, but if you're out in the public, you know, there's no law against people taking a photograph or anything like that. I guess you've just got to be considerate to what the people are doing, you know, but I don't think just photographing somebody, you know, walking their dog or going to the shops is particularly invasive, and in many ways it makes for a very kind of, you know, realistic photograph.
In your opinion, do you think that the best images are planned or happen by accident?
I think ones that happen by accident. There's a famous photographer, Henri Cartier-Bresson, who had a whole series of photographs which are just completely unstaged, and he just kept finding himself, I think, just in the right moment, in the right time. And he's got a beautiful series of photographs where he's just captured people just in the middle of their lives. And if you haven't seen his work already, I suggest you go and look at it because it's compelling.
Do you think street photographers have the power to spread messages? For example, doing shoots in poorer countries?
Yeah, absolutely. Photography can help raise awareness for a lot of things. And in many ways it can be edited more than most things can be to try and sell a particular point of view or a particular political, you know, agenda. But absolutely, just by framing a photograph in a certain way, you can tell a story, you can help convince people of certain things. So yeah, absolutely you can.
This photographer is called Tatsuro Suzuki, and the way he gets his images could be seen as somewhat controversial. He simply just points the camera at people with no warning and takes their picture. A lot of people would see this as inappropriate or invasive, but others like himself see this differently. As you can see from his images, he perfectly captures people in the moment that they see the camera, and this is something he loves in his work. Here he explains his thought process behind this.
ローっていうか生な感じの写真
わかります。
そのデザイン的な感じじゃなくて、要するにデザインじゃなくて、色合わせみたいな時あると、でもそうじゃなくて、そのエモーション、もっとエモーショナルでパッション、パッション、そういうのを自分は取りたく、それはやっぱり人間しか持ってないもの。それは僕と被写体が対峙した時に被写体が見せる表情なんで、別に驚かすつもりとか全然ないんですよ。ただそのテンションっていうかそういうものが撮った写真を考えた僕の気持ちと街の行き交う人々っていうの記録。
I think that there are some things wrong with this method of photography, but I also happen to think it's genius, and even though it's not necessarily a socially acceptable way to go about it, you cannot deny the reasoning behind it, and that the images are amazing to look at and great at capturing emotion. To wrap this up, I would say that in order to get the best images, you need to push boundaries and take risks in order to see the best results you desire. Although some people might disagree, there is nothing wrong or illegal about taking pictures in public as long as you are being polite and respectful.